from the grip of the empire, 10,000 kilometers from Moscow, just a few kilometers away from Korea and China. The port of Vladivostok, right smack in the Sea of Japan where the East is omnipresent. At least, that's what the legend says. It's November 21st, 2011, and for most observers, the writing's already on the wall. In the upcoming legislative elections, United Russia, the party of Vladimir Putin, will have a commanding victory. And just 3 months later, Putin himself will easily retake the presidency, succeeding President Medvedev. It's hard to imagine any other scenario. The atmosphere remains tense. "15 days out from the legislative elections. Inauguration of a new section of highway, done the old-fashioned way. The concentration of power in Vladivostok lies with one man, Sergei Darkin, the governor of the region. Each of his official trips is also an opportunity to campaign. We must thank Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Medvedev for the great support they have provided to our region. We need a win during the next elections, and we need economic and political stability. Have a wonderful holiday season and take care." This former longshoreman who became a millionaire is a pure loyalist. Elected governor in 2001 and appointed twice by the Kremlin, Sergei has been keeping guard for 11 years on the steps of the empire. He is a Russian heavyweight in the mold of Putin. The symbol of Tsarist Russia is the two-headed eagle. One head looks to Europe, the other to Asia. But our soul will always remain European. Behind all the rhetoric of the empire, the reality is somewhat less rosy than what the honorable governor would like to make us believe. Vladivostok was the city where the anti-Putin protests began in Russia. And guess what was the catalyst that set the people off? These Japanese cars with the steering wheel at the right. It's 2008. The Russians were crazy about them, and they shunned the old Ladas, Jigulis, and other Soviet-era cars. Then Putin decided to reverse the trend and doubled the tariffs on the beautiful Japanese automobiles. To some, that was a declaration of war, and in this war, Alexei Bondar, a used car dealer, chose his camp. Right-hand drive is our local religion. I do not want someone to decide for me if I need a right-hand or a left-hand steering wheel. And it's the same thing in business. I do not want someone to swipe my piece of the pie. And so when his piece of the pie has been tampered with, Alexei revolts. And thousands of vendors and motorists revolted just like he did. They take to the streets and defy the government for weeks. The movement began as pugilism, but quickly became a regional revolt. They were not about to bow to the dictates of the Kremlin. I was arrested, but I didn't really do anything. I just accidentally hit the bumper of the police chief's car in Vladivostok. And they took me away just for that. But Moscow does not give in, and many dealers find themselves in dire straits. Before 2008, Alexei sold over 70 cars a month, but now he barely sells any more than 15 a month. This business was our region's livelihood. That was basically all we had here. You know, that's what allowed the people here to feed their families. In the end, the resentment is high, especially because all the while, the mayor of Vladivostok launched construction projects of pharaonic proportions, 2 bridges, an opera, a university. And even this former naval base, once restricted access during the Soviet era, now aims to become the main face of the region. That's what we're living with here. Alexei does not know yet who he will vote for in the parliamentary elections, but it will certainly be for the opposition. Olga will also be voting for the opposition. She's a mother who's fed up. I'm tired of this. I've had it. I'm furious that we do not respect the rights of children. Olga is angry because the nursery schools have all disappeared. So like thousands of Russian women across the country, she's joined the Angry Moms movement, who have made the headlines over the past months to expose this surreal situation.
Пойдем в садик. За границу поедем, наверное, в садик.
At their wits' end, these mothers decided to mobilize. As elsewhere in Russia, they beat the pavement last spring. Here the slogan was, the opera, the theater. That's not what we need. We want nursery schools. We want to be able to go back to work. And in Vladivostok, they took things even further. They staged a hunger strike. The mayor of Vladivostok said, if these women want to fast, let them fast. He and his supporters even sneered that actually it might be a good thing. Maybe they'll lose some weight. Before I didn't even vote. I figured whatever you did, the ruling party would win regardless. But today is different. I decided to vote in all the elections. Now I feel that my voice counts. And so Olga swears she will vote for the Communist Party, the main opposition to Vladimir Putin. Another woman is known here for her outspokenness. She works at the local theater, and she just so happens to be the governor's wife, Larissa. The only good thing at the governor's mansion, as the saying goes, is the governor's wife. Larissa is an actress. She has been described as a very colorful character. You will not be disappointed. As soon as I get here, as soon as I start putting on my makeup, it's like Pavlov's dog. I salivate once I see the neon lights, and immediately I find myself getting away from it all. The theater is my escape. Larissa fights for what she believes in, and she has contributed so much to culture. So when we remind her of the slogans from angry mothers who are against the construction of the theater and the opera, this is like waving a red flag. When we have problems, we immediately think that we do not need an opera or a theater. We just want bread. But it does not work like that. Democracy cannot take root amid the taiga without culture. Yes, there is a problem with the lack of nursery schools. But, you know, we cannot have everything right away. And those who feel they live very poorly here, just take a look elsewhere in Europe. It's a full-blown crisis. So who is right? The actress or the governor's wife? At the Vladivostok train station, the clocks show the time, but it's not the local time, rather the time that is displayed throughout the trip on the Trans-Siberian, Moscow time. Destination, Khabarovsk. After several years of prosperity, this mythical train has regained its former glory. The only thing that's changed is that rap has replaced Soviet pop. They are lawyers, dentists, managers. They have all benefited from the 10 years of strong growth in Russia. Everything would suggest that they are the ideal candidates for United Russia, Putin's party. Surprise. Even though these elections did not offer many choices, I would like my vote to be useful. And you can bet I will vote for anything but United Russia. I agree with him. We must vote. Our voice counts. I think I will vote for the Nationalist Party of Zhirinovsky or the Liberals. Why vote? It's a shame. Voting's for fools. A shame? Why? Look at the last election. Everyone knew there was a fraud, and it changed nothing. United Russia still won. It's true, he's right. Even if we go vote, I think that unfortunately the results will be rigged. They will not reflect the will of the people. This outspokenness among these privileged youth was unimaginable just a few years ago. Is people's disaffection for Putin even deeper, more entrenched than was originally thought? We now head 1,000 kilometers due north. After a good night's sleep, lulled by the purring of the rolling train, it's early morning in Khabarovsk. With over 600,000 inhabitants, Khabarovsk is the main industrial center of the region's second largest city in the Far East, just after Vladivostok. Before Stalin, Khabarovsk was a small town of no importance, and then there was the gulag. Khabarovsk became a major hub on the way to the camps. Nothing remains from this tragic story, not a trace of anything, nothing to remind us of the thousands of political prisoners that died from exhaustion, loneliness, cold and disease. All dead under a dark cloud of mystery. Nothing. Only this dilapidated little shack. It housed the administration for a women's camp, a story that most locals do not even know about. The Gulag crushed nearly 30 million lives that Russia just zapped from its history. Rostislav is a former political prisoner, a zek, according to the jargon used at the time. Deported just as his parents and grandparents, all poor peasants. He was sentenced to 10 years in a labor camp for writing these few lines at the tender age of 16. This is the letter I wrote to my grandfather. Grandpa, do not worry, the Soviet power will not last long. It has committed too many injustices. This letter fell into the hands of the censor, and I was promptly arrested. So that this story may live on, Rostislav and Oleg joined Memorial, an organization founded by former dissident Andrei Sakharov. And they have a lot on their plate. The Communist Party still uses the image of Stalin, the man who invented the horror of the gulag. These posters are unbearable for us to look at. We told the communists, of course you can participate in elections and pitch all the proposals you want, but just do it without using the portrait of that dictator. For Stalin was not just a dictator, he was a killer, just like Pol Pot in Cambodia, or a murderer like Hitler. No law in Russia forbids the use of Stalin's image, and yet it was along this railway that trains carried inmates to the camps. Most never returned. And to testify to their suffering, Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote the Gulag Archipelago. We would like for a monument to be built here to honor the memory of Solzhenitsyn. And so? And of course, the answer is no for now. But we will not stop there. Things will change. Ultimately, everything depends on us, citizens, activists. The government should be more concerned about its citizens. I think the people in this country will start to have more say in how things are run. In all cases, this is what I hope. The former Zeks freely speak about these issues, though no one is listening. The state basically ignores them. This is Vitaly, another deportee. Good morning, you're probably here to see me. Come in. Vitaly's grandchildren gather around at his home, and for the first time he shares with them his amazing story, 10 years in the Kolyma camps, a Stalinist hell. Why were you arrested? Why? I do not even know myself. I've been asking that question for years. I was a college student when they arrested me. At the camp, as political prisoners, we were mixed with all the common criminals. That way we were less organized, weaker. We were officially the enemies of the state, while they were called the friends of the people. And these Reds were like the Nazis. It was Red fascism. They would shoot at us on the way to the work site. Idiots driving the trucks bore down on us and crushed the prisoners. We endured everything you could imagine. The country should provide financial and moral assistance to the people who lived through that. But we do not often talk about this with my grandfather. It's too painful for him. The cruelest part about this whole thing is that my fate has affected my children. I still do not know the toll it has taken on my grandchildren. We're supposedly living in a democracy here, but compared to what happens in the rest of Europe, it does not feel at all like a democracy here. Germany has acknowledged its mistakes to the victims of the Nazi camps and has offered them real support. Here we have just very minor assistance, and we get no respect. No one pays any attention to us. What traces are left behind? What can Vitaly's granddaughter take away from all this, especially now that we live in a world that has already turned the page and moved on? Irina is 22. She's studying economics. She's learning Japanese, and like 40% of Russian youth of her age, she wants to leave Russia. I want to find a well-paid job where I could reach my full potential, and here, that isn't possible for me. For example, if I compare my life with my sister's, who's living in Japan, it's night and day. There, the employer provides transport, housing, and health coverage. Japan, the envy of young Russians for the quality of its social model. You'd have to pinch yourself to believe it. You still end up by saying that Russia really has changed. But then comes the next chapter, at first reassuring, then a little crazy. United Russia will win again, but you have to fight against this virtual one-party system. And who are you going to vote for? For the Communist Party. Why? Because it's the only opposition party capable of garnering the most votes after United Russia. But you know that it was the communists who sent your grandfather to the gulag. It does not bother you? No, it's not comparable. These are not the same communists. My grandfather was the victim of an era, of a particular regime. I think today it is safe to vote communist. Against all odds, the Communist Party invokes Stalin for its campaign and attracts young voters. And Irina's ex-granddaughter is an official member. Irina voting communist to block the way for Putin, a former KGB agent, one of the mysteries of Russia. Before our very eyes, Russian society is breaking apart. You have the Russians who fight, those who scream for justice, and those who dream of leaving. But are they all eventually expressing the same thing? The same wariness towards a world that's just too ordinary? Perhaps the desire for another world that's more open and free. Not long ago, Irkutsk was known locally as the Little Paris, a kind of sleeping beauty resting on its past laurels. Today, Irkutsk has become a huge commercial center. With rising raw material and 4% growth per year, the middle class flourished in Russia. Every one of them is expected to vote Putin. Helena and Andrei are Kremlin loyalists. 5 years ago, they started their own business and their life completely changed. Today, it's easy to open a business. There are financial incentives. Taxes remain pretty low. You just need a good idea, a good business plan, and you're off and rolling. Before, I had the impression that a small business was not for me. As for my wife, she has always been attracted by the idea. But now I also see that it works. It's easy. This allowed my family to live better. I get offers of credit like this all the time. This is an offer for small businesses. This one can be approved in 24 hours. What's the rate? 14%. That's a lot, 14%. Before we had rates as high as 20%, so isn't it better now? We hope our president will maintain this policy of economic stability. Now we have all kinds of opportunities in Russia. And the crisis wound up being less severe for us than in other countries. An offer of credit, a discussion of rates, a comparative analysis of the world financial crisis, all this seems pretty common today, and yet, just merely 20 years ago, the Proidines were not even allowed to leave the Soviet Union. It was even impossible to leave the city without a permit in good standing. When Helena has her sister and brother-in-law over for dinner one evening, is it any wonder then that Putin is celebrated as a hero? We love Putin in our family. He's positive, he gives us hope. And I think his idea of power vertical, that's fine. He's restored a strong central government, which also made the regions strong. 60 kilometers north of Irkutsk, total change of scenery. We enter the kingdom of Baikal, home to the mythical Lake Baikal, the biggest, deepest lake in the world. They say that this water has purifying virtues, so we come here often to wet our hands, our face. Who then could have thought of building a huge paper mill near this gem? The Soviets in 1966. And ever since, toxic waste from this plant has put the lake at risk. And so environmental activists in this area have demanded its closure. Maxim is one of their own. The demands are finally met in 2006. But 2 years later, much to the chagrin of Maxim, another one of their own, Putin, puts it back into service on behalf of an old dogma. These cities where the entire economy depends on a single plant, that is a feature inherited from the former Soviet Union. It would be really sad if they closed the plant here, because then there would be nothing. If they close it and they do not open something else, it would be sad. They just need to build something, anything. We don't mind as long as there's work. It's really difficult to convince these old ladies who have worked in this plant all their lives. They see it as their own child. It's useless to even discuss it. Maxim is a member of an NGO, Baikal Wave. This has been a major part of his livelihood for the past 5 years. The environmentalists tend to be quite passionate about these kinds of issues, and here, in touch with nature's wonders, they can even be excessive, a bit more here than elsewhere. The Baikal, he tells me, it's not up to us to decide its fate. It is millions of years old, and we, just for our personal convenience, we built this factory. That's not a good thing. This lake is our big brother. We must respect it. That is the master of the house here, not us. Right next to the lake, in this ski resort, another cause célèbre for Maxim. The fight against pollution and waste. Not an easy task. A small victory, nevertheless. 2 months ago, Maxim managed to bring in recycling bins to sort and separate the garbage. This trash can is empty. We're waiting. Someone should be coming to take care of it. And so, when will it happen? It should happen in time for the start of the season. This is Russia, so typical. But at the same time, we are already happy that they put the garbage cans in place. The day of environmental activism comes to a close, and the night belongs to Nasbol, a party Maxim belongs to. Founded by writer Edward Limonov, the National Bolshevik Party advocates a radical nationalism. This is where Maxim met his wife, Tatiana, in this tribe of rebellious young people. punks, but without the punk look, just as Maxim did. These young people revolted but remain nostalgic for the Soviet greatness. Being nationalist does not mean we hate other nationalities. We are nationalists who love our nation, who want the best for our country. We are patriots. For me, my work to defend the environment and my commitment to Nazbol, it's the same thing. These are just different courses of actions that change, but the idea behind it remains the same. We defend the people against the abuses of power. Nationalism as a counterpower, a strange concept. Environmentalist and radical nationalist. Maxim is an activist and yet remains a paradox. You could also say he's a bit baroque, like today's Russia. As we leave Irkutsk, the ideas are just jostling around in our head. To try to make sense of this journey, full of misconceptions and contradictions, simply remember what Putin wrote. He who does not regret the fall of the Soviet Union has no heart, but he who wants to restore it has no head. You know, I grew up in the countryside in the Volga region. If I compare how I lived when I was younger with how I live now, there really is no comparison. We live much better, society is more open, and you can find anything. Compared to the period of perestroika, we live much better today. Before, traveling by train was not great. There was a lot of stealing. Today it's all over now. People behave much better with each other. Now it's actually nice to travel by train. Does Putin benefit from this optimism? Don't be so sure. It's often at this stage that people snap out of their lethargy and turn the table upside down. Nothing yet indicates that Russia has reached a boiling point, other than the anger vented from the people of Vladivostok. Putin disowned by his people. Is this scenario even plausible? The answer is just a little more than 24 hours away. Novosibirsk, the capital of Siberia. This is a woman whose tragic story moved all of Russia. Darya lost her 9-month-old son in November 2011 due to a stroke. That's how we both slept. It was always like that, every day. When the paramedics arrived here at my home, they saw that my baby was in a coma. They said, "We must take him to the hospital quickly." I said, "But where can we take him? The pediatric ward right down the street no longer exists. They closed it down." They said, "We must quickly find an ICU or your baby will die." Lacking the appropriate services, 2 hospitals refuse admission. After a dramatic 2-hour search, Darya reaches a dilapidated hospital. We waited for hours in this hospital. The doctor finally came out of ICU. He asked us to go. My husband and I asked why. He told us, "You have nothing more to do here." How's that so? Our son is still here in intensive care. That's when he told us he died. Full of grief and rage, Daria writes her story and publishes it on the web. When people read my story, they realized that it could also happen to them. And several people told me, you have to organize a demonstration to call for pediatric services. I said, you're crazy. I have not taken to the streets since the Labor Day marches of May 1st, during the time of the USSR. Up until now, I was what you'd call a passive citizen. In just a few weeks' time, Daria becomes an active citizen and creates a foundation financed solely by foreign aid. But behind the construction of new pediatric services, the fight against corruption remains an obsession. The director was awarded this pediatric ward, and he turned it into a private clinic, even though the equipment was financed by the state. If we had kept this service for children, my son could have been saved. Corruption is an evil which we urgently must stomp out. There is corruption at all levels of power in this country, from the top of the pyramid all the way down to the lowest ranking official in the smallest village in Russia. Everyone is totally corrupt. Daria also helps families like this father of a disabled child who refuses to pay bribes to enroll his child in a special school. Obviously, they want money. That's how everything works now. Yes, it's a classic case scenario. These people take bribes, and it's simply become a way of earning a living in Russia. But I don't see why I would do anything that supports the system. All it does is enrich them. Why enrich these people? The father tried to get the prosecutor to act, but he did nothing for him. Either the prosecutor is just not very good, or he just needs to be shaken up a bit. Yes, that's it. What this attorney needs is a little shaking up. In the last legislative elections, Daria voted for United Russia without asking too many questions. Today, she'll support the opposition and vote Yabloko, a center-left party. December 4th is the big day, Election Day. A big people's party for those that have the United Russia list. In this festive atmosphere, this former Olympic Greco-Roman champion is completely in his element, like a fish in the water. Alexander Karelin believes in what he's doing, yet even he, an ally of Putin, must admit that the tide is starting to turn. Yes, it's true that this election will be much harder for our camp. Harder because their minds are still marked by the Soviet system. People expect too much of the state. They expect too much of us. Here we have many people with all kinds of problems on a daily basis. And these everyday people are the majority. These are not the troublemakers who go around telling foreigners that there's election fraud. This representative hears the criticism, but as so often is the case in Russia, he diverts attention to the rest of the world and relies on a steady flow of anti-Western messages generated by the Kremlin to absorb the shock. Yet, the allegations of election fraud did not only come from Westerners. Efforts to skirt the law have become so predictable that Golos, an NGO, invited independent observers to go to polling stations around the country. And there was a resounding response from young people. During the campaign, we have already identified more than 5,000 cases of fraud. Just to give you an example, from here in our region, officials went door to door. They were telling people, if you do not vote for United Russia, you will receive less funding for the maintenance of your neighborhood or your building. And adding insult to injury, all these people already paid maintenance charges. All of this is absurd. Election day at a polling station in Novosibirsk. A small random sample of the exit polls. Who did you vote for? For the Communist Party. Why? Because I trust them. When the communists were in power, they provided for us apartments, allotments, cars. Today we don't even have the means to buy a flat. For United Russia. Why? Because Medvedev and Putin are powerful leaders. It's a secret. Gleb is a volunteer for Golos. This is his first time in an election as an observer. And at the opening of his polling station this morning, he witnessed a strange scene. This morning at about 11 o'clock, when he was not too busy, he noticed a group of 30 people, and they all knew each other. It really seemed like they all had been sent by someone. A young woman who was with them said that they all worked in the same factory, and when we asked her why they all voted here in this particular polling station, she said, "It's not me that you should be asking, but the ones who organized our trip." I think it's what you call carousel voting. They use proxies to vote at this polling station, and they're probably given other proxies to vote again at another polling station. And which party would do that? United Russia, of course. Widespread fraud, trafficking proxies, stuffing ballot boxes throughout Russia. All of the observations collected by Golos are published on the internet. Here, one observer noted that even before the opening of this polling station, there were already several ballots in the box. A man was actually caught in the act of stuffing ballot boxes. This type of fraud is nothing new in Russia. It was very common in previous elections, but this time, for the first time, the fraud is visible in real time and published on the internet. On election day, we witnessed the mind-bending gap between two Russias, the powerful state versus ordinary citizens rejecting the status quo. This alleged election fraud sparks widespread anger across the country, and now it's time to literally fly out of Novosibirsk, making a mad dash for Moscow. We jump on a plane and leave the Trans-Siberian Railroad behind. Moscow, the day after the elections. No reaction yet from the Kremlin. Both Putin and Medvedev remain silent. All the while, partial results begin streaming in among informed circles. The official results should be known by the end of the day, but early on our main focus is on the people's reaction to the alleged fraud that took place the day before, and to find out what the youth are saying. Moscow is the nerve center of Russia's leadership, but it's also the heart of Russia's protest movement. Among the youth, none of us can stand this anymore. One day or another, it's all going to come apart at the seams. His name is Ivan. Like us, he does not know yet the results of these elections, but then again, he does not really care. Ivan is an activist. He belongs to the most popular citizen movement in Russia, the Little Blue Buckets. Armed with the emblem of the movement, a toy emergency rotating light, Ivan is a kind of vigilante. He chases vehicles driving in the emergency lane. Here's one. He tracks reckless speeders in expensive cars, especially those who buy their flashing lights without a license. This car was not supposed to be riding in that lane, but it's riding there anyway. Then he puts the videos of these joy riders on YouTube and file complaints. The web surfers are crazy about the Little Blue Buckets, and as a tribute, a group of artists performs for them. Ivan did not vote, but he admits a weakness for Zhirinovsky, the leader of the far right. Russian politics, a real paradox. The election results come in. Putin's party wins with 49% of the vote. The Communist Party comes in second with 19%, followed by the Social Democratic Party at 13% and the far right at 12%. For Putin, this is his worst score ever, and the opposition claims that United Russia would have only gotten 30% of the vote had there not been massive fraud. Ilya is following these results very closely. He's a blogger, one of the most famous bloggers in the country. And for the first time, the internet has had a decisive influence on the Russian elections. Thanks to these young computer geeks, there was a mobilization of Russia's youth, a mobilization that has directly taken on the Kremlin and Putin's hold on power. You've seen how they've been talking about the elections on state TV. They keep repeating how everyone is just so happy with the victory of United Russia. So now even people who don't care much for politics will say, this is not possible. They're just screwing around with us. Our leaders must begin to understand that they cannot just do whatever they want. It's already thanks to the younger generations that things have already changed here by leaps and bounds. It's already been over 2 decades since the fall of the USSR. You know, for my generation, the Soviet Union is a little bit of prehistory. For example, I was 7 when the USSR disappeared. I do not know what it was. I never experienced the horrors of that regime. I only know what I see in the movies. For me, this goes as far back in history as the time of the Tsars or the Napoleonic battles. On the evening following the elections, a rumor swells, and it spreads throughout Moscow. It eventually reaches the ears of Ilya and his friends. A protest is organized by opponents against the alleged massive fraud, and at first we hesitated to cover it. In recent years, such gatherings only mobilized a few hundred despondent activists.
Вы должны понять, что там очень большое количество людей. На наш митинг пришло гораздо больше, чем мы ожидали. Мы не думали, что вы все придете к нам. И мы рады, что вы здесь.
This time around, despite the rain, thousands of Muscovites join in on the protests. And the officers who planned crowd control are quickly overwhelmed. This is the first time an opposition rally has been so constructive, without all the antagonizers or extremists who usually turn things into chaos. There is no hysteria. It feels good. I am sure that from today on the opposition will bring together even more people.
Putin more! Putin more!
On the podium, a champion of anti-corruption, another famous blogger, the most famous of Russia, Alexei Navalny, sets the place on fire.
Поднимите руки, те, кто пришел и проголосовал. Я хочу сказать вам спасибо. Спасибо за то, что вы ощутили себя гражданами. Спасибо за то, что вы сказали этим козлам: мы есть. За то, что вы сказали бородатому Чурову и его начальству: мы существуем. У нас есть наши голоса. Мы существуем? Мы существуем? Они слышат этот голос, и они боятся.
That evening, December 5th, 2011, 10,000 people took to the streets of Moscow. Unbeknownst to us, we had just witnessed the rebirth of democracy in Russia.